Welcome to the Out There channel, special edition, Alien Abduction, Pascagoula, 1973. First up we've got Dr J Allen Hynek. He's the guy on the right here with the glasses. He will be given his comments about what he saw down there when he interviewed the guys and lie detector tests and all that in October 1974. So I'll just cue that up now.
I went down to Pascagoula completely negative, but I worked with those men for quite a while. I listened to tapes that had been taken when they didn't know they were being taped. I saw how Charlie behaved under hypnosis, and finally the lie detector test. All of those things convinced me that he was not making it up. They had had an experience, period.
But you can't determine whether they actually saw a flying saucer or were taken aboard one.
No, I couldn't at all. There's no way that I know of in which we could determine that. It's like if you tell me that you dreamt of purple peach trees last night. What can I do about it?
Well, you have to go on the assumption that he is indeed telling the truth.
Well, yeah. You have to then judge by his past reputation, how he's regarded in the community. Would he have any reason to do it? All that sort of thing. So, I just don't know about that. Of course, it fits a pattern. You see, that's not an isolated case. We have a catalog now of well over 800 such cases.
Other worlds in this universe is something hard for us to believe. The story I'm about to tell not only proves to me there is another world up there somewhere, but some type of creatures or beings exist on that world. Many things have been written and many different stories have been told about what happened October the 11th, 1973, on the banks of the Pascagoula River here in Pascagoula, Mississippi. This is the true story. I know, because I was there. Calvin Parker and myself were employed by F.B. Walker Shipyard at that time. Sometime during the day, on that almost fateful Thursday, we decided to go fishing after work. We'd take our spinning reels and shrimp for bait and fish from the banks of the river for redfish and speckled trout. After trying a few places without any luck, we would try one more spot. That was by the old Saltpeter Shipyard, which has been out of operation for years. On many occasions I had caught fish there in the past, but after trying there for a while, our luck didn't seem to be any better, and by this time it had become dark. We were about ready to give it up and go home, when all of a sudden I heard some kind of zipping sound behind us. As I turned, I saw a blue flashing light. Some type of craft was approaching the ground. This just couldn't be, I thought. But there it was, about 30 foot long, maybe 10 foot high. And the angle it was toward us, I couldn't tell how wide it was. It was shaped something like a football, more blunt at one end. The craft was metallic. And there could have been a dome on top, I'm not quite sure. Something that looked like two windows up toward the front and close to the top. The expression on Calvin's face told me that he was looking at the same thing. The craft hovered about 2 foot from the ground, and almost instantly an opening appeared at one end. And there's no way for me to express the feelings I had when these three things appeared in that opening. My God, Calvin, what's happening? I'll never forget those words. As I glanced toward Calvin, he seemed to be going in shock. These 2 inches tall, the head seemed to come directly to the shoulders without a neck. The nose was about 1.5 inches long, and it came to a point. The ears were similar to the nose, maybe a little longer. And directly under the nose was a slit. It resembled a mouth. There could have been eyes. I can't recall what they looked like. Their skin, or it could have been some type of clothing, reminds me of elephant skin. And it was very wrinkled, and it seemed to shine. The arms resembled human arms, but the hands were webbed with something like a thumb, more like pincers. And the arms were long in proportion to the body. The legs remained together, and the feet seemed to be round, like an elephant's foot. And these things seemed to glide about the same height from the ground as the craft, and almost instantly were upon us. 2 of them took hold of my arms from the side. There was no sensation. I was raised from the ground. I glanced around. I saw one take hold of Calvin, and I saw him go limp, and found out later he had fainted. The battles I survived almost 2 years in career crossed my mind, but I could not resist these things. I could not move. As they were taking me inside the craft, all I could think of, they're going to take me away. The light inside the craft was almost blinding. The room seemed to be round, with no tables, no chairs, and I've been unable to describe the instruments inside the room. The only one I can partially describe is the one they used to scan my body. It seemed to come out directly from the wall. I didn't see any attachments. There could have been one. It was between 6 and 8 inches in diameter and oblong. The end focused on me was a different color or a different type material than the rest of it. It resembled a big eye. These things held me while this eye scanned my entire body. And it seemed to linger more at my head. And I noticed these things were careful not to let the eye focus on them. I have no way of knowing why. Then they left me suspended there for what seemed eternity, but it couldn't have been more than a few minutes. I kept thinking, what are they going to do with me? If they take me away, will anyone ever know what happened to me? But they came back, took hold of me, had me back outside, and led me to the ground, almost the same spot they had taken me from. When my feet touched the ground, my legs gave way. They seemed to be weak, and I fell. I saw Calvin about this time. He was standing with his arms outstretched. He was in shock. I was trying to get up and make my way toward him when I heard this zipping sound again. I turned around. There was the blue flashing lights, and almost instantly the craft was gone. I couldn't believe it. We had encountered something that had to be from another world, and hopefully without any physical harm. But I had no way of knowing at that time how it would affect us mentally in the days and nights to come. No one will ever know the after effects of this encounter with something from another world. the almost sleepless nights, the terrible nightmares when I do sleep. Without the love and understanding from my wife and kids, I don't believe I could have survived. The many friends and concerned people throughout America that has talked to me personally, or have written letters, or by telephone or telegrams, a big majority of these people, these responsible people, have seen UFOs. Some are even scared to tell their neighbors because they don't want to be laughed at, called nuts. Our governments say they don't exist. Well, what's got to happen? Has 200 million people got to see a UFO before it's firmly believed? The law of average tells me I don't have too many more years to live. But our future generations, if there is future generations, can look back and say that he has done everything, or he did do everything that was humanly possible to prove that there is other worlds up there somewhere, and that some type of beings exist on those worlds. I was hypnotized by scientists that are known worldwide, and a polygraph test or a lie detector test, which proved I was telling the truth. I don't know of any other way that I can give more proof. Only one thing. There's something, I don't know how to explain it, but something I've been trying to remember that happened to me while I was aboard that craft. And hopefully it will come to me someday, and that could be the final proof. I believe in God, and I have become to believe now that God, in all his greatness, that would create a universe so vast, there's not an end to it that we know of. And why do we think that he would put life on this one little world with all those other worlds up there? I know there's believers and non-believers. To the believers, I hope you never have to go through an experience like that. To the non-believers, it might take an experience similar to that. And here is something else that's even harder to believe. I have been contacted by these things through my mind since the Pascagoula River encounter. And I believe I will come in physical contact again with them in the future. I believe these things are making preparations to communicate in some way with our government. Only time will tell. When these things happen, people will look back and say, well, he was telling the truth. I'm Charlies Hickson.
The next three interviews are from 1973, 74, and 1999. This last one, they go on for over 40 minutes. Let's see, 58 minutes. And I'll just stick those at the end, and you can just compare if their story changes in each of the different interviews. They've got different qualities, but I've done some audio enhancements on them. But the main bit of this was the first 10 minutes, which is the Hynek comments, and also that nice clear statement that he made on some decent microphones. So I'm just going to cue it up now and sit back and have a listen.
On October 23rd of this year, Charlies Hickson, one of the men involved in that incident at Pascagoula, invited WWDC newsman Rudolph Brewington to his home in Goshen, Mississippi. That's just north of Pascagoula. and Hickson recalled his experience.
Last year on October the 16th, in the fall of the year, Calvin Parker and myself, at that time we were employed by F.D. Walker & Son Shipyard in Pascagoula. And sometime during the day on October 11th, we decided to go fishing after work, something that I do, quite often when I'm not working, is fishing. So after we got off work, probably 4:30, I think, we were working 9 hours a day. I came home and to get my fishing gear, and we wouldn't go out in a boat because we were going to the banks of the river and fish from the banks for speckled trout and redfish. So we got our bait, and we got to the river and tried several spots, and the fish didn't seem to be biting. So there was one more spot that we were going to try that in the past I'd caught fish there a lot of times at the old Saltpeter shipyard. It's an old bandit shipyard. So we went back up the river to the old shipyard, and we were fishing from a pier off of a wharf, you might say, on the banks of the river there. And it had become dark by that time. We do quite a bit of fishing after dark, down here on that time of the year. So I don't know what attracted my attention, where I had reached around to get more bait, which was sitting behind us, or I heard some kind of zipping-like sound, like air or steam or something escaping from a pipe. And as I turned around, I saw some two blue flashing lights, or either pulsating lights, I'm not sure. And it seemed like it was some type of craft, and it seemed like it was almost down to the ground then. In fact, it seemed to be about a couple of feet, above the ground. It just hovered there. So Calvin had turned by this time, and he was looking at it too. And really, I didn't know what to do. I was just spellbound there for a few minutes, and then almost immediately some type of opening appeared in the end that was toward us, with what I assumed to be the front end. And the light that had come outside it was real bright light. And three things appeared in the doorway of the craft, and they seemed to just glide out of the craft. They never touched the ground. They seemed to just glide across. It must have been 25 or 30 feet from us, or maybe a little further than that. And they came to us, just glided over to us, and two of them took me by the arms from the side, and one took hold of Calvin, and I seen Calvin go limp, and I didn't know it then, but he had fainted. So they carried me inside the craft, and the light was almost blinding inside. In fact, for about 3 or 4 days, I had something like a bad welding flash in my eyes. And I can't recall, or I can't remember just what was on the inside, simply because the light was so bright that I just couldn't make out what it was. But I didn't see any tables or chairs, and the room seemed to be round. Of course, that could have been because the light seemed to be glowing from the walls and the overhead and the ceiling. But they carried me, I guess, about the middle of the room, and we would just seem to be suspended there. I couldn't move. I didn't have any feelings, no sensation of any feel. And it seemed to something like a big eye. I keep referring to it as an eye because it was about size for a small baseball. In the end, it was focused toward me, was a different color or different light. And it seemed to come directly out from the wall, and it came within 6 or 8 inches of my face, and it remained there for a few minutes, and then very few minutes, and then it went over my entire body. I'm assuming it did, because when it went down like this, I seemed to be suspended there, and the next time I seen it, it was coming back up over this way. So I assumed that it went over my entire body. But it came back in front of my face and stayed there for a few more minutes, and then it seemed to just go right back into the wall. And these things, the way they were holding me, I was elevated, because they weren't as tall as me, and they were upright, and I was elevated like this, and I could move my eyes, only thing I could move. And I could see that they had released me. And I don't know where they went, whether they went outside the craft or another room or compartment, but they didn't come in front of me. And they left me that way for a few minutes. I don't know how long. And then after a while, I seen them then when they come back to the side of me and took hold of me again. And they carried me back outside the craft. And and we were still just gliding. I wasn't touching anything that I know of, and they seemed to just glide back out to where they had taken me from and put me back down on the ground. Well, when they did, I fell because my legs were weak and they gave way on me. And it was this time that I seen Calvin again. He was standing there. He was standing facing the river with his arms outstretched, and he was almost in shock. He seemed to appear to me at that time something was wrong with him. So I was trying to make my way toward him, and I was crawling. I couldn't get my legs to working. But before I got to him, the strength of what it was came back to my legs, and I was getting up on my feet, and I heard the same sound I'd heard before, a zipping sound. And I glanced around, and I saw the blue flashing lights, and the craft was just gone, just almost instantly. And I made it to Calvin, and I shook him and was calling to him, and it took me several minutes to get him where I could even talk to him, with any sense, and he was going in shock. And these things that came out of the craft, they were about 5 or 5 foot 4 inches tall, and they didn't have a neck. The head seemed to come directed to the shoulders, and they had something that resembled a nose on a face, and about where ears would be was something that was similar to the nose, only it was a little longer. They seemed to come out almost to a point. And under the nose, there was something like a slit for a mouth, and it was very wrinkled. And it appeared to me to be something like an elephant skin, but I don't know where it was a metal or what it was, but it seemed to be very wrinkled, with the wrinkles running horizontal. And in the area where the eyes should have been, it was so wrinkled that I'm not even sure there was eyes. I can't recall whether there was any eyes or not, and Calvin says he can't. But anyway, after I got Calvin where I could talk to him, we didn't know what to do, and we were almost scared to death. And we first decided we wouldn't tell anyone, but the more we talked about it, the more we realized that we had to tell somebody. It was the military authorities, if nobody else. So we called Keesler Air Force Base, which is only about 30 miles south of here. And I talked to someone there, and they told me that the Air Force didn't handle those things anymore, that we would have to go through our sheriff's department. Well, then we hesitated again, because, you go to the people, just something like that is not supposed to happen, and when you would probably be laughed at and ridiculed. But we talked it over again and decided we would call the sheriff's department, and Sheriff Fred Diamond told us to come on over there, that we'd talk about it. So we stayed there for several hours talking with them and them questioning us. And the sheriff promised me that it wouldn't any news media know anything about it, that he would try to get it to the proper authorities, if he could find out who the proper authorities was, and have it investigated. So we went home that morning, and it was morning because they had kept us there quite late, and with assurance that it wouldn't be any publicity about it at all. Well, we went on to work that morning, and by 7 or 8 o'clock, there was telephones ringing, all over the shipyard. And I called Fred Diamond, and he said that he don't know how the story leaked out from the sheriff's department, but that by that time the whole world knew about it.
You said something that was like an eye ran up and down your body. Do you think it was like examining you?
Yes, it was it had to be some type of examination. Well, I say had to be. It appears to me that it would be. And after talking with a lot of scientists, and I'm convinced that it was something. It was some type of examination that it gave me.
Did you communicate with these creatures, these things?
No, and the only sound that they made, they didn't attempt to communicate with me. The only sound that they made, one of them, and I'm not even sure it come from one of the things, but it was some kind of mumbling-like sound, a low mumbling sound from one of them. But other than that, they didn't try to communicate. I tried to say something to them aboard the craft, but I think now, and I have reasons to believe, many different reasons to believe, these things were robots. They weren't beings. They were being controlled by beings from somewhere else.
What made you think that, sir?
Well, for this, I just mentioned several reasons. I didn't see any movement breath in the chest area. I didn't see any movement of breath in the slit of the mouth area. It didn't move. And when they move, they seem to move as something mechanically. They could move their arms like this and in their shoulders, but their head didn't move. And when they moved, they seemed to turn as if mechanically. It appeared to me that they had something that they were programmed, you might say, to do something. They had something specific to do, and they just simply done it, and their attention wasn't distracted one way or the other.
Did their examination of you hurt you?
No. The only physical pain that I had is when they took hold of me there on the banks of the river. The one that took hold of my left arm, and this arm here, just instantly I felt pain, but it was gone just that quick. And then once aboard the craft, at one time, I felt the same pain in the same area again, but it was just instantly. And that's the only physical pain that I had through the entire thing.
Now, approximately how long do you figure you were in the craft itself?
Well, I'm not sure, because I don't wear a watch. A watch won't keep time on me. And Calvin didn't have a watch. And we've tried to go back, or I've tried to go back and try to figure the time out from the time that we left the air going to call it Keesler Air Force Base and all. And it could have possibly been as long as well, it could have been anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, and probably even longer than that.
Can you give our listeners some idea of the size of this craft that you were suspended within?
Well, the craft, let me explain now. The angle that I was looking toward the craft, it's hard for me to say, which I can't say, whether the craft was round like a disc or whether it was long or oblong like a cigar. Because it was, let me give you an example. Like the craft was sitting here. We're assuming that this is the front end of it. That was the end that was toward us. Well, I'm looking at it from this angle. So all I can see is what is this side and what I'm assuming to be the front, and maybe it's a little bit of the back. So I can't be sure whether the craft was round like a disc or was long or oblong. But it appeared to me that it was about 30 or 40 foot long and maybe 8 or 10 foot high. Well, it hadn't affected me, I don't think. It has affected my life because I don't have time for recreation that I did have before with my wife and my children. And there's always there's so many interviews, and there's so many places that I go in the country which I'd rather be home with my family. And shortly afterward, for a few months, I couldn't sleep and I couldn't eat. It was on my mind all the time. But the fear's all gone now, and it's just not as much fear as it was before.
Have you had any recurring nightmares about this?
Shortly after I did, yes, but that's all gone now. And then I might add that we asked the sheriff that night, because after we decided to tell the sheriff, certainly we wanted to prove to him that it did happen. So we asked for a lie detector test. They didn't have the facilities here in Jackson County. So later on I think it was either the latter part of October or the early part of November, Calvin had a nervous breakdown because of this. He was in a hospital in Jones County. I took a polygraph test here in Pascagoula, which proved that I was telling the truth.
Now, you say your friend Calvin has had a nervous breakdown.
Yes, he had a nervous breakdown, and he remained a while in the hospital, but he's okay now.
You don't seem to be too affected by it outwardly.
Well, the only way that I can explain that, Calvin is quite a bit younger than me, and Calvin had never known much fear. But I've known fear a lot of times, nothing like that. But I was in combat in Korea. In fact, I was in Korea about 20 months and 16 days in the Korean War. And I've known fear many times before. And unless that was the reason that caused me to hold up better than Calvin did, I don't know.
Speaking of fear, were you afraid during this entire thing?
I certainly was, and I can explain that. What I consider normal fear to be is something that you expect, just normal fear is something that you expect here on this earth. But this was something that wasn't supposed to even exist. And it's fear that you can't even explain. Because I kept thinking, you know, that what are they going to do? Are they going to take us away? Or are they going to kill us? Or are they going to take us away? And, well, in fact, when they carried me aboard that craft, I figured that I'd never put my foot on Earth again.
But you never see your family?
That I'd never see my family anymore.
What is your feeling on UFOs? Do you think that there's life beyond this Earth?
Well, let me explain. Before this happened to me, I can't say that I believed or disbelieved, because I simply didn't think about it one way or the other. I guess I'm like most people. I had my own little world that I lived in, and I didn't consider life on other worlds. I didn't think about it. But now there's no doubt in my mind. I positively know that there's at least one world up there somewhere with some type of life on it. I know it to be a fact.
An intelligent but peaceful life.
That's right. I think they're peaceful because, you know, they didn't try to harm Calvin and me physically. In fact, they seem to be very easy with us. What they wanted, I don't know, but I certainly don't think that they're hostile at all.
Would you advocate our government trying to communicate or contact these individuals, these beings, to help us on our planet?
Well, certainly. Since this has happened to me, I've done all the research and all the reading on these things that I can. I've talked with many scientists and doctors and people that is concerned. I think the government should have been doing it a long time ago, because as wasteful as our government is in their spending the money that they've simply thrown away, some of that money could have been used to try to maybe contact intelligent life on other worlds, and probably it could have already been done.
One of the arguments that the government always gives is that if they reveal the presence of UFOs, it would cause widespread panic and fear, a la the War of the Worlds broadcast of Orson Welles many years ago. Do you agree with that?
Well, to a certain extent. Now, I agree that maybe years ago, yes. But I think that the facts is out now, and I honestly believe this. I don't think that the Air Force has abandoned their UFO studies. I think that they have definite proof that other worlds and beings do exist. And I think before this year's out, and I say this for well, with some reservation, but I think before the year's out that our government is going to, particularly our Air Force, is going to come out to the American people and tell them that these things do exist. But I think they're going to do it in a way where they won't cause mass hysteria like you just mentioned. And I think that it will be done before the year's out.
Okay, fine. Well, first of all, what's your name?
Chuck Burgess.
Okay, Chuck. I was trying to get a hold of either Chuck Hickson or Calvin Parker to find out what happened to them. Well, you know, what they say happened as far as being taken aboard UFOs the other night.
Well, now, I listened to the tape that they made for the police department when Captain Glenn Ryder and Sheriff Fred Diamond of the Jackson County Sheriff's Department, when they were trying to break their story. And I heard the tape that they made there, and from all appearances, something happened to them. You know, we all find this hard to believe, but something happened to them. Their description, their stories matched. They were interrogated separately and then left in a room together to discuss it, and it was all the same story all the time. And what happened, the Ingalls Shipyard is located south of Highway 90 on the Gulf here in Pascagoula. And these two gentlemen were fishing from the old Shaw Peters shipyard and off an old pier there at the shipyard, which is about a quarter of a mile south of Highway 90, which is one of the most heavily traveled highways in this part of the country. And about dark, which would have been about 7:30, this spacecraft, spaceship, whatever you want to call it, they saw it coming about 2 miles away. It had flashing blue lights. It was, our terminology would probably be silver or aluminum. It came down and hovered about 3 feet off the ground. Three creatures who were described as about 5 feet tall with big eyes and pointed ears, wrinkled skin, a pale-colored skin. They had claw-like arms and feet. came out, and they hovered or floated. They didn't walk. They kind of floated out, and the 45-year-old man, which is Hickson, stood there watching, and young Calvin Parker Jr., the teenager, fainted at this particular point. Hickson said one of the creatures made a buzzing sound, and the other two immediately picked up Hickson and floated him into the spacecraft. And he says, to his knowledge, they brought Parker in also, but Parker had fainted or passed out or hysterical. Anyway, neither one of them knows what happened to Parker. But Hickson says they lay him out. Now, there's been conflicting stories on this, but I think news media has done it, because from the tape, their, I'll say, confession, or what they told the police department, they lay him out, not on a table. They just suspended him in midair with nothing to hold him up except that he was weightless. And they took this big eye-looking object and went over him. I guess you'd say like an X-ray, like you take an X-ray or take a picture of him. Mm-hmm. And he says he stayed in there about 30 minutes. And then at a command again, a buzzing sound of one of the creatures, they put him back out. And he described the inside of this machine, and he said it was something that he's a shipyard worker. He's around electronic parts all the time, and he said he had never seen anything like the inside. It was just like daylight in there, yet there were no lights whatsoever. Then they put him back out, and it kind of picked up again. And as according to eyewitnesses who saw an object floating through the sky with blue lights, it apparently headed east toward Mobile, Alabama, which is about 40 miles to the east of us. It passed over the Pinecrest subdivision, which is where I live. I didn't see it, but it passed over the Pinecrest subdivision, and 3 different people saw it. We've had reports of 7 or 8 other people who saw something. About 30 minutes before the incident supposedly happened to these 2 men, Van Cleve, a small community northwest of here, 3 gentlemen were driving in a car up there. One of them is a parole officer with the state penitentiary system, and 2 of his companions saw something about 30 minutes before this. And so apparently, if this did happen, and Sheriff Fred Diamond and Captain Glenn Ryder, Barney Mathis with the Sheriff's Department believe these men, they believe what they have been told, then apparently this spacecraft, or whatever you want to call it, came from the northwest down through the Van Cleve area into the Ingle Shipyard Complex, which is about a half mile from where this happened, and then across Pascagoula heading east toward Mobile. Now, it turned, the people who saw it in Pinecrest said it was moving east, moving forward, but it was turning in a circular clockwise movement as it moved, which would mean it was going over and over and over as it went, and the blue lights were coming out of the apparently 2 portholes that Hickson says he saw, and it was just turning around and around. Now, the 2 men were checked for radiation, and they were checked at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi for radiation, and the tests were negative. And the 2 men have stated that they will take a lie detector test, and I just walked in. We haven't had a chance to check the latest happening this morning, but Sheriff Fred Diamond was to call us if anything new happened, so we're assuming that at this point nothing new has been added to the story.
Chuck, you said that we could not get a hold of these men individually because their attorney has advised them to say nothing?
That's true. These gentlemen work for F.B. Walker Shipyard in Pascagoula, and the shipyard's attorney is representing, I'll give you his name.
Well, that's okay. What about the? You said the Air Force is coming in, or what? What is happening now with them? Do you know?
No, I don't, because late yesterday afternoon we kind of wrapped it up for the night, and then this morning we haven't made that call to the Sheriff's Department yet to find out what is happening.
But you had heard that the Air Force was sending in investigators from California or something?
Yes, when they were carried to Keesler Air Force Base for the radiation test, they again told their story there to some officials, and I'm not sure who they talked with over there, but I'm sure they talked with the commander of Keesler Air Force Base, and they have called in some investigators from the Air Force, and they are based in California. That could possibly be Vandenberg, I'm not sure.
Now, Chuck, you say you heard the tape of the statement of these two men.
Yes.
What is your impression? Do you believe them?
I believe something scared them, because they are, now they've just handed me a news item that's come in from UPI. They are still scared this morning. In fact, one of the young Parker boy had to have sedation again sometime yesterday. It doesn't say when. But something scared them. And do I believe them? I believe they saw something. And whatever it was has put one of them in shock. And I find it all hard to believe. When I was sitting there yesterday morning listening to the tape, I believed that they saw something. But the further you go, and to me, and I'll say common sense takes over, you begin to wonder, now, did they? How could they? So, I don't know. I think if I were to listen to the tape again, I'd be a believer again. I know Sheriff Fred Diamond is. He is a believer.
Do you have a copy of that tape, Chuck?
Oh, I'm sorry. I listened to that tape because of the fact that I didn't believe. When I walked in, I thought it was a big hoax, and I listened to the tape on an unofficial basis.
I see.
The fact that I'm telling you, I shouldn't even be telling you that I heard the tape. Okay. But I did, and it's strictly on an unofficial basis that I have heard this.
Chuck, I want to thank you very much. It'll be interesting to see what develops. There's not really much to say, except it leaves you wondering, doesn't it?
Well, it's kind of like Barney Mathis said. Barney is the chief deputy sheriff here in Jackson County. And he said, now, somewhere along the way, Chuck, somebody is going to say, are you continuing the investigation? He said, what do you continue? He said, how do you investigate something like this? As a point, it did not touch down on the ground, so there's no scorch mark, no landing marks, no nothing. We only can take these two gentlemen's word. And remember, one of them passed out or fainted, and all he remembers is seeing it and not any of the details of what went on at that time.
How old is the Parker boy?
The Parker boy, it's, I'll give you the same age as we have. He's either 17, he's either 18, or he's either 19.
Okay.
Conflicting stories. See, we've not been able to talk with these people to actually pin down some of these things.
Chuck, again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Any way we can help, let us know.
Great. Thanks again. We've been speaking with Chuck Burgess, who's a news reporter for WCIS Radio in Pascagoula, Mississippi.
Well, I know you were kind of telling me when we were just talking a couple of minutes ago. So it was October the 11th of 1974.
Yeah.
Can you take us back and kind of explain?
Yeah. Well, in October, I was working at a small shipyard in Pascagoula, and Calvin Parker was working for me, a shipbuilder. And sometime during the day, we decided to go fishing that evening, which I'd done many times after work. So when we got to the river, the Pascagoula River, it began to get late, and the fish weren't biting. So we were going to try one more place up by the old Saltpeter shipyard. That's where this thing happened at. And we were sitting there at a pier, fishing out into the river. And I think maybe I was reeling in. I don't remember now. But I heard some hissing sound behind me. And I raised up I was sitting down on the pier. I stood up and looked around, and there was something back there. It was hovered about that far from the ground. It's probably 40 foot long. I don't know whether it was round or whether it was oblong because of the way I was looking at it. But I know up toward what I'm assuming to be the front, it was something like two lights, pulsating lights, or they were blue. And it really frightened me. I didn't know what the heck it was. And by this time, Calvin, he had got up on his feet, and we just instantly, there was a door appeared at that craft. Brilliant light from outside where we were. And there were three things came through that doorway. Turn that book over on the back, and you'll see what they look like. Okay. That's primarily what they look like, yeah. They were very wrinkled, and I didn't see any eyes. And I know now, I didn't know then, I know now they were robots. But anyhow, they came around to the side of me. One took hold of this shoulder, and I felt pain in it, just instantly pain. Another one took hold of this shoulder, and I just went limp. And they weren't touching the ground. The light was off the ground, and they were just gliding out to where I was.
Well, levitating?
Levitating. And I seemed to just, when they took hold of me, I just raised up to the height they were. And we was in that main light, and they was taking me toward the ship, and I noticed Calvin at this time, and when one took a hold of him, he fainted. I didn't know what him, he just passed out from fear. And he don't know where he went aboard the craft or not, and I don't know. But I'm assuming he did. Anyhow, they carried me on into that craft, and inside it was a round compartment or room. And it was very brilliant, like the light was coming out from the wall, the overhead, and the floor. And we stopped. They stopped me, it seemed like in the middle of the room. And they just left me, but I wasn't touching anything in a leaning position. And I could tell that I couldn't move anything but my eyes. I could move my eyes. I could tell that they had left me. And something in the wall in front of me, it came out of that light in that wall and moved up in front of me about this far. It was probably this big around, and it appeared to me like a big eye. But there was something in there, it was some kind of instrument, or I can't describe what it was. But anyhow, this thing remained there for a few seconds or minutes, and it went down. And of course, I'm having to assume it went under me and came back up my backside, but after a while, it moved back up in front of me again.
It like scanned you or something.
Evidently, that's what it was. And it stayed there a few minutes, and they went back into that wall and disappeared. And I didn't know what to think of. I was terrified, but I couldn't say anything. And I don't know how long I was in there. I really don't know. But after a while, these things, they came back, moved up to me. I could tell by my eyes aside. They took hold of me. We turned around, and they carried me through that main light back where I were and put me down. They didn't throw me down. They put me down. I don't think they were trying to harm us anyway. But I couldn't, and I didn't know for a long time later on under hypnosis, I found out that there was a window in that room there by where this eye came out. And it's even hard for me to believe. They were something like living beings, looked almost like us. I could see through that window. I didn't know that for a long time. Something that was in my subconscious mind. And, but they looked almost like we did. And what they were doing, evidently, they couldn't live in our atmosphere, I don't suppose. And they had these robots to examine us. Well, we didn't distract their attention one way or the other, seeing they had something to do. And I tried to talk to them. I couldn't hear myself. You can hear yourself talk. I couldn't even talk. And they done, I guess, what they were supposed to do. And when they carried me out there and let me down, I saw Calvin. And he was standing on the banks of that river with his arm about stretched like this. And he was going in shock. And the reason I know, I spent 20 months a little over 20 months in combat in career war. I know how men act when they're going in shock. And when I couldn't get up, my legs were still weak. I was trying to make my way toward him to see if I could help him. And I managed to get up on my feet before I got to him. And I couldn't get him to say anything, just like he was out of it. I shook him, and I even had to slap him to get him where I could talk to him. And I told him, he was screaming, what did they do to us? I tried to assure him that they didn't, I don't think they done us any physical harm, and they had gone, When I got him back where I could talk with him, then we didn't know what to do. I didn't want to tell anybody about it, They call us crazy and nuts, Things like that just not supposed to happen. But anyway, we talked about it again. Before we got home, we decided that we'd call the sheriff department and notify them it might be a threat to our country, is what I was thinking about. And I could tell they thought we was pulling their leg. But anyhow, they sent 2 deputies over there. We were. And asked us to follow them to the station. So we followed them to the sheriff department. And they kept us in there I don't know how long. They had him in one room and me in one room. And then later on, they brought Calvin back in the room with me, and they went out to do something. We didn't know it at that time. But they had a hidden tape recorder. And I think that copy of that tape, I think, is what really finally convinced them that something had happened to us. So Fred Diamond was the sheriff. He's deceased now. And I made him promise me that they wouldn't, there'd be no publicity about it. Just try to find out, get it to the proper authorities, whoever they were, We didn't want to get any publicity about it at all. Sure. So we left there without assurance that we wouldn't, there wouldn't be any publicity. We got home and it was almost daylight then. And I had a responsibility to the shipyard. I was a foreman there. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to work. And we got over there to the shipyard. I got my people off working in my office and the telephone rang. And it was Fred Diamond. No, the first one I heard, it was from some news reporter in Jackson. And was asking me what had happened to Calvin and me the night before. Well, I just hung up on him. I didn't know, how did they find it out? Right. But then the telephone rang again. It was Fred Diamond, sure. And I said some bad words to him and told him that news reporter had already been trying to contact him. He said, well, I don't know, Charlie, how it got out of this hole, but it got slipped out somewhere. So, by that time, that day, it was all over the world. My oldest son was, he was in the Marine Corps, but he was in Vietnam, but he was in Okinawa at that time. And they had it the next day in that Sergeant's type paper you'd get over there. So anyhow, we went down to the shipyard and I couldn't work. So news media you wouldn't believe was coming to that shipyard. Well, somehow the word got to Dr. Allen Hynek and Dr. Jim Harder from Berkeley and Dr. Allen Hynek out of Chicago. They came down here the next day and wanted to talk with us and hypnotize. But meanwhile, let me get a little bit ahead of the story. Meanwhile, that day that we was down there, and I got to thinking, what if we had radiation? I've been with my family and other friends, so I brought that up. They carried us over to the Singer River Hospital, and they didn't have the facilities to check us for radiation, but they called Keys Air Force Base, and they told us to bring us over there. So we got over there. We had an escort there waiting on the gate, and they had cleared the entire area. You couldn't see anybody. And we went to a conference room, and that's right here, they interrogated us, checked us for radiation. And they thought they found a little radiation on Calvin, but I don't guess they did. But anyhow, we came back, and it was the next day, then Dr. Hynek and Dr. Hardy came down, and they put me under hypnosis, and Calvin, and they come to the conclusion that something had happened to us. Well, you wouldn't believe it, for madhouse here for 30 weeks. We couldn't sleep, we couldn't eat, and every time that we looked, somebody trying to interview us, and then a little bit later on, they wanted to take a polygraph test. So I got off work that evening, and I went to the sheriff's department. They had a polygraph examiner there, and when he took me back in the room, he told me, he said, "I'm going to take this." He was going to prove me to be a liar. He said, "Now, if you want to go out, I'll go out there and tell them that it just wouldn't work. You don't want to take this polygraph test." I said, "Man, I'm tired. Give out. I want to get home. Give me the damn thing." So when he got through, in fact, he gave me 2 tests. And Fred Diamond, the sheriff, said when he got through and went on the outside, he said, "That man is telling the damn truth in there." And then all the talk shows over the country wanted me there, and they'd like to drill me crazy, man. And Calvin, he went back to Jones County, back home where we came from, and he had a nervous breakdown, and they wouldn't even let me see him for 2 weeks in the hospital. So it just that's how it all happened.
Were you wearing a watch by chance when it happened?
No, I don't wear a watch because a watch won't keep time on me. Now, the reason I say it won't keep time on, I've tried every kind to be thought of. And when I was in Korea, we'd capture those North Koreans and Chinese. They'd be took all kinds of watches off the GI. And I tried every kind of watch I could think of. They wouldn't keep correct time on me.
I just wondered if you knew how long that you had been.
No, we don't know. We don't know. We went back several times and tried to reenact, how long it possibly could have been. It could have been 2 or 3 hours, or it could have been less than that. We don't know.
Now, you always hear about possibly like implants or something, some kind of device that they put on you. Have you ever been checked to see if when that thing was scanning you, that it put something in your skin or something like that? Or?
No, the only thing that got me concerned now, I use the VA hospital. They take care of all my needs. They found something on the back of my eyeball, back of the knot. And they don't know what it is. Well, a long time ago they found it. They don't know what this is. And they even sent me to New Orleans to a cancer doctor. They thought it might be a cancer back of my eyeball. And it's not changing. They check me every 6 months. And that could possibly be something they implanted. I don't know.
It's just like a sty or something like that?
No, it's on the back of my eyeball, on the back side. You're like a little bump there. That's what they tell me, what the doctors tell me,
Was this your first experience, you remember, when you were younger, or even now? Are you still getting visited, or?
Well, I didn't know it at that time, but under hypnosis, I don't want to elaborate on this very much. I did find out that, yes, I had been contacted when I was young, in Jones County years ago. And I'm not prepared to talk about that. And yes, I've been in contact a lot of times with them since then. But I'm not going to talk about that today either. But I will when the time comes.
But I know you don't want to get into it, but the type of contact, is it you like getting a feeling, or you don't physically see them anymore?
No. Well, I did. It's in the book. We saw, it was a different craft. My entire family was with me. The next year, on Mother's Day, we went home to spend Mother's Day on the farm with my mother and Dad, and we would come back late at night. And it was a big ship. My wife became hysterical, and my daughter, this she's gone now, 2 kids. She was a baby. It woke her. She was screaming. And I was trying to get out and go to the grass before we talked outside. And they wouldn't let me go. And, my entire family was so bad. But we didn't want it published. I wrote about it in the book. It's something that we'll never get over. And I don't know I don't know how it all going to initially turn out. I don't know. But I got a feeling that, I'll live to see it. That, there won't be any doubt in anyone's mind that there's other worlds out there that has life on it. It's going to be proven. I was lecturing one time with Jeannie Dixon, and you know who Jeannie Dixon is? Yeah. In St. Petersburg, Florida. And when I arrived there, she told them that she wanted to talk with me when I got there. So I went up to her suite, and she asked everybody to leave. And she took a reading on me and wanted to talk with me. And she told me, she said, I know this happened to you. And Calvin. But then I was going everywhere people wanted me to go. I go, I wanted everybody to know about it then. I wasn't making no money, but I mean, you know, I'm doing it. I lay off more and do it. Anyhow, she told me, she said, you need to slow down. She said, you'll prove one day that this happened to you. She said, you will give yourself at the rate to face your boy. And, I asked her, I said, Miss Dixon, I said, do you have any idea where these things might have come from? She told me, yes, I do. She said, I think they come from a small moon off of Jupiter. We know now that there's 9 or 11 moons that Jupiter has. They found one now with the possibility of water on it, life. So maybe it's close by it, and we think that Jupiter's so big, we don't know what's about Jupiter. So, I don't know. I just don't know.
Have you ever thought about it, maybe crossed your mind in the last 28 years, why, or even longer than that when you were growing up, why they might have chosen you for some reason, or?
I don't know. The only thing I can figure there is that when I know something to be the truth, ain't nobody gonna change my mind. I think they wanted me to know. And back then, you know, people wouldn't even talk about UFO. And now it's a common word, you know, household word, UFO, everybody knows about it. So I think they want people to know that whenever they do come down, it won't be so bad. But can you imagine what would happen if the president would come on air now and tell us that we're going to be visited from another world out there somewhere? What might happen? And I don't think they want that either.
Now you went to Keystone, obviously, and you're interviewed by some folks there. Did they ever say, hey, we don't want you to talk about this, or you didn't actually see what you saw? You know, we always hear about that. No. Well, how did they deal with you? I mean, how have they been? Did they ever contact you anymore? Or?
Oh, yeah. I talked to many people from the military, scientists. I talked to people from NASA. They come to my home. And you'd be surprised with the scientists that I've talked to that they know there's other worlds out there with life on it. And no, my family's never had any ridicule. I've never had any ridicule. In fact, we're more friends than we've ever had in our life now. And my daughter was in school. Her classmates, they wanted to, you know, to talk to me, want to see what happened. And so they come home with her, you know, and they were really enthused. Because the young people are got to deal with this some of these days, you know. We've never received any ridicule, you know.
So in your opinion, that this is what you try to say, or over there real quick. That's not true.
Sorry.
No, not at all.
But it's real.
This I was going to ask you if you think that this isn't some kind of military experiment or something like that.
No, it couldn't have been. No. No, it couldn't have been. It had to have been real from another world out there somewhere.
And you said that some people that didn't say anything back then have kind of contacted you.
Yeah. Now, in that book there, there's a couple of people in Pascagoula that already said then that they had saw it. I've had a man write me from Atlanta, Georgia, just a little while back. He told us that Mr. Hickson said it's been a long time, so I finally want to tell you that me and two more of my friends saw that night, who were small boys. And said we were so afraid we wouldn't tell nobody, we wouldn't come out then. But he wrote me a long letter and told me that we did see that night. And then there was a lady that was out back, somewhere over there, that was in the evening, in the summertime, hanging her clothes on the line. And she said she saw some kind of crash, looked like it was coming over that way. And a lot of people saw it. There was a Sunday school superintendent, music teacher, and I don't know who all.
Could be more than that, not,
They saw that crash. They would come forward in it. They didn't want to get ridiculed. They thought it'd be they would be ridiculed for doing it, They wouldn't believe things then. But,
so I remember you said it was like a crackling or a buzzing sound?
Like a buzzing sound. Just like a buzzing, like air, maybe air escaping from a pipe.
Okay.
And it went on.
And it was silent.
I didn't hear anything, no engine sound, or these things didn't make any noise at all.
You didn't smell any fuel or anything like that? No jet fuel or something?
No, I didn't feel any odor at all.
And when you went back out there to check it out again, could you see it was hovering? It wasn't like on the ground,
It wasn't
right?
on the ground.
So there wouldn't be any marks or anything?
There wasn't any mark. There's a lot of people went out there that said they did see something unusual, but I doubt that because it never touched the ground. And I know you read Eric Von Danigan's Tshirt to the Gods, and he came over here, and he wanted to talk with me. We went out there, and he took, I don't know how many pictures of the place, and he was real enthused about it. He told me that I didn't look out in my mind.
Now there's, obviously, yours and Calvin's story is a very famous story. There's Travis Walton out there in Arizona, and then, of course, Betty and Barney Hill. Now, there's thousands, maybe even 1 million people claiming to have been maybe abducted or made some kind of contact. Do you think that a lot of times those people might be exaggerating? Those stories might not be as believable?
Well, it could be. I don't know. It could be. Now, if this thing happened to me, I got a letter from Betty Hill in Newport, New Hampshire. And she invited me up there to let's talk about it. She was, maybe these things were the same. So, I grabbed a plane to Boston, and William and Dad helped me right to move. He met me in Boston. We got a rental car and drove on out to Portland. And I spent a couple of days and nights there talking with Betty. And she wanted to believe that it was the same thing, but it wasn't. I told her, I said, they don't resemble the things that you saw. I said, these things were robots. And then I talked with Travis Walton. He's a friend of mine now. I talked to him a long time in Aspen, Colorado. He was out there in the glacier, and we talked there a long time, then back to Denver on the plane. And that happened to him. I know that happened to him in Betty Hill. But anybody else, I don't know.
Of course, they made a movie out of his experience. Has anyone ever approached you about doing it?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't do it. I just didn't want to do it. But now, I'm having talked with some people now. It's been so long now. And it's cost me a lot of money. It's cost me a lot of time, and away from my job, away from my family. But now, I'm going to see, I'm going to make some money on it.
Do you have any regrets that you were there, that place, at that time? I mean,
I thought about that a million times, and I don't wish it hadn't have happened to me. But now I know that there's another world out there somewhere. And I've had an opportunity to meet some of the brilliant scientists in the world, and I've met a lot of people, UFO investigators, and everybody else from all over the country and all over the world. And no, I don't wish it hadn't happened to me.
You think about all these. It seems like maybe it was 15 years ago or so around here on the Gulf Coast. There's a lot of so-called, sightings that were starting to happen, or people were getting some videotape footage. Do you think those were, real sightings? What, the Gulf Breeze sightings or something like that? So
forgive me, Lord, if I'm wrong, but that was a fake. That didn't happen. I went down there with Bud. You know who Bud Hopkins is. Bud came down from New York. I've become real good. He's been there several times. We've become real good friends. And he wanted me to go with him over to if that thing happened over there in Poland to people. There were some people that was working for him that had a photograph of a thing that he made and filmed. So that was all a fake. It wasn't real. And all them Gulf Breeze sightings they say now, a bunch of bullshit. But excuse my language.
That's okay. That's fine.
It's not right. Most of those things are from that Air Force base down there, up Air Force base.
Let's see. Do you think that these aliens or the extraterrestrials, could they be from, maybe 1,000 years in the future? Are they like time travelers maybe? Or did you get the technology to be able to do what they're doing?
No, I don't think. I think they have the means to come to Earth. I don't know how. When I thought about it and talked with a lot of people, it could be their mind, to travel with their mind. I honestly believe that we could use 40 or 50% of our brain more. We could move mountains. We could do anything. Maybe that's the way they travel. Well, you say, why do they bring a spaceship? Well, they got to have things in the spaceship to do the tests when they get here. But probably I'm wrong, but I believe that they do it with their mind. That's why they travel.
How much do you think the government knows about this? Do you think that
They know a lot about it, yeah.
Do you think they've actually made contact with some of these beings?
I think so. I've talked with some of the astronauts. I talked with Jim McDivitt. He's one of the first in New York. And he told me that whenever they were up there in outer space, they had the rockets off, and he said that the other two astronauts were asleep, and they had the cameras on all the time, and said that he saw three objects coming in their direction that looked like it was going to be a collision, they're on a collision course. So he told me that he called Houston Control and told them, and they gave him permission to fire the rockets and move out of the way. But he said before we fired the rockets, that they swerved and missed them, and said he had it on the camera. And so when they got back down there, said that they told him that there wasn't anything on the film. But he said he had to have been. He said he told him there wasn't anything on the film.